everyone, and welcome to our webinar on walking through a hotel's Wi-Fi network design using iBwave Wi-Fi with Scott Pereira. My name is Kelly, and I work here at iBwave in the marketing department, so hi to everyone on the webinar. We're going to get to the webinar very shortly, but first I just wanted to very briefly go over some housekeeping items with you and also give you an introduction to Scott. So first up, housekeeping rules. If you have any questions while we go through the webinar, please use the question box in the GoToWebinar control panel that is on your screen. We're going to get to as many questions as we can at the end of the webinar, and any questions that we don't get to, we're going to reply to you offline. Also, if you are on Twitter, feel free to join the conversation at #iBwaveTalks, where I'll be tweeting out a few highlights as we go. So moving on to the webinar, let me introduce you to Scott Pereira. Scott is our Director of Innovations here and has been focused on our new Wi-Fi network design solution and is behind the launch of our new Wi-Fi suite of products, which includes the mobile app that we launched in February, as well as iBwave Wi-Fi, which is the more powerful PC version we just launched a couple of weeks ago, and that will be the focus of today's webinar. So with no further ado, Scott, I'm going to hand it over to you to get started.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Kelly, and thanks everyone for attending this afternoon, this morning, or this evening, depending on where on the planet you're located. So I thought before we get started, for some people, I know iBwave is a new company and new tool that you're considering right now. So I thought I would start with a quick introduction. Who is iBwave? So iBwave is a software company, and our specialty is in everything to do with planning wireless indoor networks. We're technology agnostic, so we support every technology. And what we've done now is that we've really tailored the tool specifically for the Wi-Fi market to respond to a lot of the market demands that we've seen. We're very proud to say that we're a worldwide standard for indoor wireless design, which means that almost all indoor wireless designs, multi-technology, are being used with our tool right now, which also keeps us a technology leader, and we're investing a lot in innovation, keeping up with trends, keeping up with new technologies as they're deployed. And we were also very proud and very grateful for our over 700 companies that have standardized on our tool in over 87 countries around the world. So chances are, if you are in this business, you probably know someone that is a certified iBwave user or that uses the tool on a day-to-day basis. So moving forward here, the other thing I like to present is that Kelly and I get the opportunity to speak to you here today, but there's a huge team behind the software. Very proud of the team. That they put in a lot of good work and hard work every day to make sure that that software is at its best, that we have all the latest technology and everything. So I always like to mention them on those webinars. And where are those people located? Well, here's the really nice thing. So we're spread out throughout the planet. As I mentioned, we're selling in over 87 countries, and although we can't be in every single country, we strategically have people located around the world that can easily get to those countries. And so chances are there's someone in your time zone that if you need to call for support or speak to, will be there to answer the phone or even come into your office and help you out. So our solution is also the only solution on the market right now that allows you to do multi-technology. So although today's webinar is primarily focused on Wi-Fi, every project that you work on today that you design, let's say for a venue, can later be upgraded to DAS, small cell, LTE, public safety. So all the investment that you put in on learning this tool, on modeling that building, on creating that design, is something that you can capitalize later on when you offer those customers additional solutions, additional things that you can offer to the customer. Or if you're an IT manager, well, you might be today in charge of managing the Wi-Fi at your building, but as small cells get more popular, maybe there's going to be a need for public safety. You can add that all onto the same file and have a complete visibility to track the maintenance and evolution of that project, which is really important in today's world. So what is the offering that we've done? As I mentioned, today we're really going to be focusing on the Wi-Fi offering. And the Wi-Fi offering consists of iBwave Wi-Fi, very simple name, which is the PC version of the tool. And because when we were building this tool, we got a lot of voice of customer feedback that people today, when they do surveys, have to go on site with a laptop, and laptops are heavy, and they have to use different kind of adapters to kind of hold the laptop and so on. We said, well, why don't we make that easier? And so we ported that solution also onto an Android base, which supports tablets or mobile phone. So on that mobile tool, you can do a lot of the sidewalk work with just a simple tablet without having to carry your laptop with you. And how do we exchange files between those? Well, we thought, okay, cables today, everything is going wireless. We are a wireless company. Well, why would we use cables for this? So we have the iBwave cloud that allows people to transfer files from their mobile to the cloud for storage and of course keeping track of those projects, but also of course for collaborating or sharing with the PC. This is interesting because I just mentioned to you as if it were a single user using both tools, which works, but you also now can leverage having a design team in one part of the world. So let's say, for example, you have a design team in Paris, and then in the UK, you have some field technicians that are responsible for several buildings. Well, those field people can leverage the mobile tool for their day-to-day needs, doing survey, spot checks, even design and taking picture. And the design center can then receive those files remotely without having to ship people back and forth and pay expensive flights and so on. So it also does save quite a bit of costs working with those kind of solutions. So yes, we put a very fancy animation here to illustrate the exchange between the cloud and the tablet. So that mobile tool, what can you do with it? As I mentioned, we tried to port as much of the functionality from the PC version onto the tablet, but of course we also have to keep in mind how much horsepower the processors on those tablets have. So we had to come up with some creative ways to be able to do prediction on tablet. So we've developed actually a proprietary propagation algorithm for doing two-dimensional prediction, which is something that doesn't exist on the market today. We have access to parts. So as you can see, all those components that you're seeing there can be dropped and do your design, do your prediction. We have an auto placement that automatically places those. And of course, most importantly, the part that a lot of people were asking us to find an easier way to do is the survey portion. So now you can walk test with that mobile tool. And another iBwave unique thing that we have here is this concept of push pin, where you can drop a pin anywhere on your design, and inside that pin, you can attach pictures, video, audio, any type of note that you want to capture, which is extremely important because all of you guys that are working in this kind of project right now know that we receive a lot of two-dimensional floor plans from a top view. And there's only so much detail you can see from that. You don't see if there's fancy lighting, if there's particular things on the ceiling, and using those push pins, you can take those pictures, attach them to your design, and of course, either for future reference or for collaborating with your colleagues, they can all access that later. So how does it work if you are working with the mobile tool? Well, you can start off by importing a floor plan and setting a scale. Then, leveraging our auto placement feature, you can choose a manufacturer equipment, so all the access points, all the components are modeled according to the manufacturer specs. You run the auto placement, will automatically place your access points, and then you can also do an auto channel, which will optimize the access points to minimize your co-channel interference. Now, of course, this is the automated way, but you can also design manually if you want to place those access points yourself. And it doesn't really matter because even if you use the automatic, of course, you have the ability to move access points and calibrate them as you need. Once the auto placement is done, you might want to also do a walk test. So of course, as I mentioned, we can do survey. And when I talk about survey here, we support two kinds of survey in iBwave Wi-Fi mobile, is the active or throughput testing, and of course, the passive or signal strength testing that you can do in that tool. All the survey data that you collect is already integrated into the file, and then as you go from your tablet platform to the PC platform, well, all of that data passes along with it. So no need for export, import, and dealing with other tools. And finally, the other thing that's interesting for all of you that have done site survey, I remember I used to go on site with a whole bunch of tools. Well, you can mark up directly on the floor plan, add those push pins to get another layer of information. And because it's such a graphical software, we have a layers tab so that you can hide and show layers as you're adding different data. So you're not going to end up with a design with a whole bunch of crowded information, access points, survey, markups, pictures. You can enable and disable different layers as needed. Then we move into the PC version, and because we're on a PC, again, talking about horsepower, we have a lot more horsepower on this PC version. So that allows us to do not only two-dimensional prediction that I mentioned, but now three-dimensional prediction. And to do three-dimensional prediction, what we do is the software comes with a database of materials that you can model your venues like this in 3D. To do this, it's actually quite simple. You can take AutoCAD plans, import them, and automatically assign materials to the different layers. You have the ability to draw those walls manually, of course, and this really gives you the functionality to choose whichever one is more optimal in your case. The other thing that's interesting about our 3D prediction is it really is a 3D prediction in that right now we're looking at the walls here, and you can see some are different heights than the others, but we also support inclined surfaces. So for modeling stairwells, inclined tunnels, and things like this, you can really capture the prediction in those as well. In addition to, of course, the 3D prediction, well, there's a whole host of other functionalities that we can do here. We have automated reports. We have the ability to really create what we call a trunking diagram. So I can show you here, this is something unique that right now doesn't exist in the Wi-Fi world. When people place access points and do design, typically the designer is looking at the coverage and survey, and once they do that, well, they don't really think about all the work that goes in after the prediction. But to put that in place, you need to know how are those access points connected back to controllers or switches or routers, and how much cable is needed. So we are able to capture cable in iBwave, all the network equipment as well, and build you these trunking diagrams, which can then lead to creation of an automatic cabling report telling you from which port to which port the cable should be connected. Now think of the amount of time that's saved when the commissioning process by having these kind of diagrams that the installer can refer to, or even as an IT technician, I'm responsible for the network in my building, I can see exactly which AP is connected where, and if ever I have a fault, I know exactly which cable to disconnect or replace or troubleshoot and so on. So this is a huge time saver, not just at the design process, but later on. And one of the reasons why usually when people ask us if we do prediction, I say, of course we do prediction, but iBwave is more of a production tool, not just a prediction tool. So we do survey, we do prediction, but we're really focused on the production, getting more projects done quicker, and being there for the evolution of the project. So we have the trunking diagram. As I mentioned, of course, we can import floor plans, and we support every format. So AutoCAD, PDF, all the different image formats can be brought in, scaled, and used as a background for your design. We can also, on the PC version, do surveys. So the same active and passive or throughput and signal strength surveys can be done on the PC version. And of course, all your designs, some of you might have a need for exporting your final design into AutoCAD. So we also support that. When you finish your design, if you need a CAD for whatever reason, you can export it, and we're also going to calculate your cable length. We already talked about the prediction in 3D. So this is an example here of when you're looking at this from a top view, not that much detail, but as you can see, visualizing this in 3D shows you that your access points are at the right height. You can see where cables are passing through walls and so on. So it gives you an added degree of confidence, and for presentation to your customer, they get to see what that project will look like before the implementation takes place. Usually helps a lot in signing real estate agreements and things like this that you all, I'm sure, are dealing with. Finally, we have the automated reports. So one thing that I hated when I was doing design is that I did my RF portion, I had my design finished, and then I had to go back and, almost like an accountant, count how many cables, how much length, how many access points, how many connectors, and build an equipment list and build various reports. And I spent sometimes just as much time in the reporting phase than I did with my actual design phase. So in iBwave, we're proud, and I'm going to show you, to tell you that we have a whole bunch of reports that can be further exported, customized to your company logo and so on. So really customized to your needs. So now that we've seen a little bit the offering of the suite for Wi-Fi, let's take a look at a typical design workflow. So of course, this is a simplified view. We only have an hour here, but I wanted to illustrate a little bit some of the steps that happen. And the first step that happens, I'm sure with all of you, is, well, there's some kind of business case that happens. We have a problem to solve. We have to understand the customer requirement. Based on the customer requirement, we're going to need to come up with a quick evaluation. So this is where you can really leverage iBwave's mobile tool to bring in a floor plan, assign a scale, use the auto placement to achieve a certain criteria, which can give you an approximate number of access points that you need. And based on that, you can come up with an estimated cost and see, okay, well, does the business case pass or not? If so, and in many cases, of course, it does. If not, we can adjust the design to make it fit. Well, then you start with your site survey. And of course, when you're doing your site survey, as I mentioned, I've been on many of those before. You're probably carrying a whole bunch of tools, digital camera, a tool for doing signal measurements, a tool for taking down notes, maybe printed paper, so on. And again, this is where that mobile tool really comes in handy. Because you have everything electronically in a convenient form factor that you can actually go on site, we are able to leverage the tablet's camera. You can draw on and take notes directly on the electronic floor plan. You can drop the access point. We can do the survey measurements. So all you need to do when you go on site is really take your tablet or mobile phone, and you can go back to the office or share this through the cloud to your colleague very quickly. Then typically there's a detailed engineering phase. So this is where that collaboration between the mobile file can be opened on the PC. We can add another degree of precision, so assigning materials and modeling, doing calibration to make sure that based on the survey data we collected, our propagation is corresponding correctly, and the materials that we assumed are actually what's being used on the field. Once that detailed engineering is done, we can then do the installation and commissioning phase. And again here, I know that a lot of people typically go with their laptop, but using our mobile tool, you can actually open that file again during the installation phase, have access to your design. You can share it with installers. So maybe there's multiple people doing the installation and multiple people have access to that mobile tool, so they can all have a copy of the design on hand with them. And the nice thing is that you can do as-built changes. Sometimes access points move from whatever reason during the installation. And of course, you can do a second survey once you've commissioned that to make sure that everything is compliant, and also to have a record of how the signal was when you left there. Now, think about it. Wi-Fi is happening in an open environment, so unlicensed environment, and you're getting paid to do your design or you're maintaining that network. Anytime people can introduce interferers into that space, you want to at least have something that shows that when we left that venue, everything was working fine. And sure, there might be optimization projects in the future. Initially, the design was working properly, and now if we need to optimize, you have a benchmark of what you had initially. Then comes the phase that typically people don't pay too much attention to. A lot of designers doing Wi-Fi design, once we get to the commission, they walk out and it's done. But the reality is that there's a whole phase on operating and maintaining that carries on. Take the example, I'm sure all of you have been to a hotel where you've had very poor Wi-Fi coverage. And this is typically because a lot of the process ends here. People finish the design and then they don't look back anymore, and only when a compelling event, huge customer complaint or something happens, do they realize, oh wow, there's something wrong with that network, we need to go back? Well, using the cloud, you have the storage of all the projects you've done. You could submit them to the customer as well. And they actually, with the mobile tool, would have tools to be able to do a first-line troubleshooting and make sure that the network is working. So for doing regular spot checks and things like this, our mobile tool really comes in handy. So we looked at a broad view, again, high level of a design. But if we want to look more specifically now at the hotel, what I've done is I've tried to break down some of the phases that we would follow when doing a design. After we do this, I promise you we're not going to do a whole webinar on PowerPoint. I'm going to jump into the tool and show you how we model that venue. But I at least wanted to show you some of the steps that we've done here. So first of all, as I mentioned, you're going to arrive on site and you're going to have to do a survey. And it's interesting, a lot of people, when I say survey, the first thing that comes to mind is just data collection. But to me, a survey is a lot more than that. A survey is where you're going to want to pick up details like this. So in this particular hotel, you can see that, as I mentioned, looking at a two-dimensional plan from a top view, we just see the walls and things like this, but we don't see any details like this. So using the mobile tool, you're able to take pictures and capture that, okay, for sure we won't be able to put access points in these areas because we see they have this kind of fancy lighting. And so we can attach that to our design. The other thing that we do is, so I walked in different locations here, dropping those push pins, capturing information like this. And you can also see that for sure we did also a survey to see, well, let's see what is alive in that area right now. So we did a passive survey. We collected information about all the other transmitting SSIDs in the area. We also did a couple of AP on a sticks. And this is interesting because many people have to test all the candidate locations when they're doing a design. With iBwave, you can just place an access point at one or two locations, do a walk test, collect data, and then use that data, as I mentioned, to calibrate your propagation algorithm. Once you have a calibrated propagation algorithm, you can use that multiple times throughout your design. And another thing that we've done on the survey is also, well, we see here where we can't install. Well, let's identify where we'd like the access points to be installed. And so as you're taking pictures with that mobile, you can actually take notes and draw directly on the picture. So think of the efficiencies you gain versus being on site with a digital camera, taking a ton of pictures, getting back to the office, exporting that, loading it somewhere, then marking them up. Well, right here, you can do all your markups directly on site and everything gets attached to those different push pins. Once we've got the survey, want to head back to the office and bring that building to life within the tool so we can do some simulations. And this is where we start the 3D modeling. So in the 3D modeling, like I mentioned, we have a database of materials that comes with the software. We also allow you to customize those materials, and you can even create your own materials. So we're selling that product in over 87 countries around the world, and of course building standards change from country to country. Some countries have earthquake building codes, so the materials are much stronger, attenuate much faster. Other countries less so. And so we have already a very wide variety of materials, but you can, of course, tailor those materials to yourself. And being able to visualize your floor in 3D gives you kind of a second degree of confidence that you can see all the different materials that you applied in different location. And of course, if needed, at any time, you can right-click on any material, replace it, try a different material. And most importantly, from that survey data that we just collected, you can calibrate those materials. So, of course, when we're assigning that material, even though sometimes we do a best guess, we might not be 100% accurate of the attenuation, but running the calibration in iBwave really will adjust the attenuation factor to match the real data that you collect in the field. And of course, the other thing that's interesting is viewing that building in 3D, not just the floor, but the entire building. And the reason I chose this hotel for today's webinar was that, as you can see, this is a hotel complex, but it consists of multiple buildings attached here, so almost like a campus solution. So we have multiple buildings that we're covering. And the other thing that's important to remember, you're at a hotel and there's a swimming pool in this hotel. What do people do in the summer when they're by the pool? Well, today everyone has their mobile devices, their tablets, Kindles, and so on, and they're sitting by the pool and they need to be connected. So with iBwave, not only are we designing for inside, but we also want to see what's going to be the overlap outside and make sure that people that are enjoying the sun can also get good coverage by the pool. We've done the 3D modeling, and this is where the fun part really starts for me, is dimensioning and planning. So I talked to you about the importance of providing coverage by the pool. So this is where you would probably be setting some target regions to have coverage, different throughputs, different areas that you want to cover. Once that's done, you can take a look at the parts that you want to use. So there's many manufacturers right now making equipment for Wi-Fi. And in iBwave, we model all our access points according to their specs, from the antenna patterns to the output powers to even network equipment and external antennas that they might need. Of course, in iBwave, one thing, so if you're doing a campus like this, there will be large amount of cables. There might be cables that go beyond a certain distance, so you can add the cable in iBwave. It's not a necessity, but honestly, it really will save you time in the long run. And so we also can model cable in our tool, and we will generate warnings or errors if ever you go beyond a certain length. And then finally, as I mentioned, like we do in the mobile tool, in the PC version, we also have an automation that allows you to select the access point you want to use, set a coverage criteria, run it, and the software will tell you how many access points you need, and of course, different amounts for different technologies. So even though we're using the same access point, the software is intelligent enough to say that, well, I don't need to have all my 2.4 radios turned on, so I'm going to turn off, but over here, I'm going to need at least 16 5 gig to meet that coverage objective. And when you place that, of course, we can also automate the channels. So you can choose the best configuration depending on the region of the world that you're in. And if ever there's a channel, for example, let's say I absolutely don't want to use channel 6 because on my initial survey, I see that everyone in my surrounding doesn't understand Wi-Fi, and all those access points that the general public are using are coming locked on channel 6, so that channel is crowded. When you do your auto channel placement, you can unselect channel 6 here, and will only choose, let's say, between 1 and 11. So very, very customizable for the designer. Finally, the detailed engineering, and this is where I said we've placed our access points, we want to validate, and this is where 3D comes in nice. Make sure we don't have any access points over walls, make sure that we don't have any access point in the wrong areas that we didn't want, and the heights of those access points. So of course, if we did a design and we accidentally put all the access points too high or too low, it will affect the prediction. And when I talk about the validation here, or the detailed engineering, because we model the antenna patterns in 3D, you can even validate the different tilts and angles that you have. Make sure that the access points that you use are either directional or omnidirectional and are sending the power where you need. And of course, the final step is maybe running prediction output maps to check for co-channel interference, signal to noise, data rate, signal strength, and so on. So the detailed engineering phase gets done. Then comes that two-step that I said is extremely important and currently not being totally addressed by everyone right now, the deploy and commission and operate and maintain. And to show you how important this is, I thought I would take an example of initially, maybe back in 1990-something, we had 802.11b which was being deployed throughout. And the fact is that I've been to hotels, and I'm sure some of you as well, that still today in 2016 have an 802.11bg network in their venue. And that's because nobody ever thought about the 10-year life cycle of the building. And the reality is that every couple of years, Wi-Fi is going through an innovation. There's a new protocol that comes out, better, faster, more robust, delivers higher throughput, and so on. But it doesn't necessarily mean that people go back and operate and maintain that. So using iBwave's cloud or using this, you either as an IT technician can refer back to your design and see, okay, how many buildings do we have in our network? What protocol are they? And if I want to propose to my boss to invest, how many access points will we need to change, and come up with an estimate. Or if you're someone delivering services, the same thing. You want to keep track of all the buildings that you've done, and when you see that, oh wow, 802.11 just came out, let me check in my database of projects that I've created and see how many venues are still on BG, and maybe I can reach out to those customers now and say, hey, Mr. Customer, there's a new protocol that came out, and I can maybe help you by optimizing and building on that design that we created for you a couple of years ago and add that. So the nice thing about it is that although if we look here at the red line, the engineering intensity, at the beginning, there's a lot of engineering work being put in, modeling the walls, importing the floor plans, doing a site survey, getting pictures, information, and things like this. Whenever you have to upgrade that project, in iBwave, you can build on top of the existing project. So all you really have to do is drop in the new access points, run some prediction, and the engineering effort is not that high. And then if you fast forward again to AC, well, same thing. Maybe you won't have that much work to do for a couple of years, that new protocol comes out, and instead of starting from scratch, all you have to do again is just drop those APs, but you're not taking pictures, and a lot of the site survey materials and figuring out how that building is configured is already done for you. So using this image here, you can see the importance of operating and maintaining. And from a business side, if you're a service provider, well, how you can generate additional business. And if you're an IT person responsible for the network, well, making sure that your hotel or your firm is not getting complaints because the Wi-Fi is slow, and that you have a plan that you can present to management and say, well, to increase our Wi-Fi, we've done an assessment. This is how much we need to invest based on what we have right now. So it kind of helps on both sides of the space. And of course, the operating and maintenance, this is something that I strongly recommend. There should be regular spot checks and walks throughout a building, hotel, airport, wherever you are, making sure that the signal strength is good, and you can leverage that mobile tool that we have to do regular spot checks, update the data to the cloud, and so on. So just wanted to take you guys through that life cycle there, and as promised, now we'll jump into the actual tool and see the project in real life. So I'll just, if you'll permit me, switch over to here. And what I wanted to do is first maybe give you a quick tour of iBwave Wi-Fi and the interface that you'll be facing when you start a project. As you can see, we're using a panel-based approach for all the different controls and buttons that you're going to be using. Now, the great thing about this is that those panels are customizable depending on how you want to work. You can undock or pin those panels as needed. You can move them around. Some people like having everything on the right, some on the left. Some like to have it split like this. For me, I like to look at it like a cockpit here. So I have my main interface and my panels that I'm working with. And so you can navigate throughout your project using these panels. Right at the top, you'll see here that we have a tab called the Startup page. This one for new users of this tool. So if you download the free viewer or the free trial, you can refer here, is extremely important because we've added some shortcuts here for things that you might be doing when you get started. So you've just installed that iBwave project, you open it, and you want to start by creating a new layout plan or floor plan. Well, you can click here, and we show you exactly shortcuts on how to do so. So you can see here, there's an icon over here to click to add a new floor plan. Then I attach an image file, press OK, and I can add a scale by using the ruler button over here. And other type of things that you might need. So I want to view my project in 3D. How do I do? View in 3D. Here's the shortcut buttons. So there they are, and you can do that. I like to mention that because it's a place where people can quickly reference information. It's also where you can reference previous hotels, that previous buildings that you might have worked on, and of course saving to the cloud or opening from the cloud and so on. Then we look at the other tabs that iBwave has. So we have something here called a picture plan, and a picture plan is a place where you can create a cover page. So in this case, we took a picture of the building, we took a snapshot of the map, and iBwave automatically creates you this little template at the bottom showing who the designer is, the address of the venue, and so on. And as you can see, to navigate, you simply have to click on the different tabs here to go from floor to floor. You can see that they exist here also, and of course, at any time I can double click here to take me to a floor. So you actually have two options of navigation in the file. If we look at a layout plan, so over here we've already imported a layout plan, but it's important for me to highlight to you that when you click here to create a new layout plan, you have the ability to assign a name. You can either attach or browse an image file. This would be if you're doing two-dimensional prediction, or you can attach a walls file, so if you want to do the 3D prediction. In my particular case, I'm going to show you an example of both so that everyone understands the difference between two-dimensional and three-dimensional prediction. Right now, I've imported this from an AutoCAD, and I assign material to all the different layers. If I zoom in here and click on any wall segment, you're going to see that it's telling me this one happens to be concrete light, and I have the attenuation properties for that. If I want to replace it, of course you can replace it there. And if I click on another material, I see that here we have an open air environment, so kind of like an atrium that exists in this area here, which is very important because some venues have that. Here we have a heavy concrete that exists as well. So you can double click on the materials and see what's placed there. But we'll get to the materials in just a bit. What I wanted to illustrate is you bring that floor plan in, and right now there's going to be a lot of moving pieces. We're going to be placing parts, we have walls, we have images, and so this is where this tab called layers for me comes in extremely handy. So in the layers, you have the ability to visualize and lock different layers. So let's say, for example, I'm done modeling my walls and my floors. I can go over here to the walls and say lock, and I can, whoops, let me just undo that. I locked my walls, but I didn't lock my horizontal image. There we go. So now I can freely work over those walls without messing up my design. So that layers tab you're going to see is going to come in handy as we go forward. And if we were starting a design here, I mentioned maybe we went on site, we took some pictures, but we might also want to do a survey. So if you look, there's a button here called Survey, and in Survey, you have a couple of different options. So you have here, Create a Manual Survey, which means that you'll click and you manually enter the value for that dot. We have the ability, of course, to do a Wi-Fi survey, active or passive, which we'll do in just a second. And we also wanted to give everyone the ability to import survey data. Now, I know that some of you are already using other tools for capturing survey data, and we wanted you to be able to still design in iBwave and benefit from all the productivity advancements that we have. So you can, at any time, export the survey data from another tool and import it and overlay it on your iBwave design. So this is something that we did there. And of course, we have what we call that NetScan tool that everyone has access to. If you click on NetScan, we have passive and active that's available. If I press play, right now it will actually start scanning the network that I'm, the whole network around me. You can pin down different access points that you want to keep over here so that as you're walking around, you can check the signal. And the other one that we have is the ability to calibrate those readings. So everyone told me during the VOC or Voice of Customer that, hey Scott, it's great when I do a survey with my laptop, but the sensitivity on my laptop radio is so much stronger than my mobile device, and so it's not reliable. Well, we give you an ability to do an offset for 2.4 or 5 gig, depending on what you want, and so you can actually make the radio on your laptop look weaker to mimic more a mobile device or so on. Right now you notice that I'm using my internal radio, but of course if you have an external dongle you can plug it and use that as well. The other one that I wanted to show is the active. Now this is where it gets really interesting. In the past, for people to do active or throughput testing, you had to launch a command prompt, go into iPerf, and quite complicated to launch a server to send data back and forth. What we've done with iBwave is, if I minimize here, all of you are going to see that when you install the tool, you're going to also get this tool here called iBwave Active Survey Server. And when you launch that server, all you have to do to start a server to send data back and forth is click on the start or stop button here. We tell you what the IP address is of the server, and as you can see here, just click to copy. So I'll click here. And now back in iBwave, if I want to, sorry, let me just click here. If I want to do an active survey, I just paste my server address here, and I can choose if I want to do TCP, UDP, download or upload, choose my window size and say play. And just like that, I'm actually doing a throughput test right now. So if I bring up that active server, you can see that over here on the active server, the data is going back and forth between those. Now for today's purpose of the webinar, for sure, I'm doing everything on the same PC, but in real life, you might have a PC connected somewhere on your network with this server, and of course, on your mobile tablet, you could be walking around collecting this throughput data. So I'll just stop the server here. So this is a quick way of kind of doing like a temperature check, walking around doing a throughput test and checking that. Where it gets really nice and interesting for me is generating the survey directly on your floor plan. So you can choose here a passive, and we can say okay, and just as you would do with any of the other tools, well, maybe if I zoom in, you can just click and do a stop and go survey as you're walking, and it's scanning, of course, everything in our surrounding and locking it into those points. So over here we're looking at the passive scan. So I'll just zoom out here and close this one. Once that's imported, we have the ability to filter, if you want to filter by SSID, by BSSID, by channel, and so on, to see what the results are. And then the other one would be the active walk, which is really nice because you can record throughput values. So if I click here, as soon as I start recording, you can see here on my legend, it's updating and giving me some statistics based on my walk. So as I do a stop and go walk, we see that the legend is becoming more and more rich. It's counting how many points that we did, and it's giving us the average throughput as well by percentage. So we can see when we start a project or when we finish a project what the values are. When we're done, you have some information here about that. And of course you can toggle if you want to look at throughput or RSSI. So in that survey panel, if you want to see what was the signal strength while I was doing the throughput test, I can see here. And if I want to see what the throughput is, I can see here. So notice that the legends dynamically adapt based on the information that you're going to be displaying. So we've done our surveys, and let's fast forward a bit to the design phase. And this is where we can decide now, okay, do we want to design automatically or do we want to do it manual? If we wanted to do it manual, we have what I call the parts toolbox over here on the left, where you can choose an access point and then choose from a list of manufacturers that we have in here. And you see, almost like browsing an online catalog, for each manufacturer, we have the different models that they support, we have their specs modeled and so on. And all I would have to do is click OK and drop those access points. But let's do it the automatic way just to illustrate that. So we can go here to automation, choose automatic access point placement. I'll choose a generic access point in this case, just not to play favorite with any of the other vendors that are out there. I choose my output power, my target that I want to reach, and when I say run now, the software is going to go through my floor plan and identify how many access points do we need to meet that objective. So you can see here how many it's found so far. We'll just give it a second. And there we go. The software has done its work, and it sees that we need 4 2.4 and 8 5 gig, which kind of makes sense due to the attenuation. We can say apply, and if you look at this, the software automatically places those access points. Now remember, anytime you're using automation and automatic placement, to me it's like cooking. I really enjoy cooking, and when you cook, you normally have a recipe, and you always spice it, salt and pepper to your liking. Well, when you use the automation, the software is going to tell you more or less how many you need, but you might have to do the odd fine-tuning, making sure that the access points are places that you validated during the survey can be installed, and also, of course, that they're not falling inside walls and things like this. So you might have to do a little bit of fine-tuning, but still saving a lot of time versus having to manually place all those access points. Once that's done, we can zoom in here and we see that, well, it placed all those access points, but the channels haven't been properly optimized. So to optimize the channels, we can then go back to the automation. Over here where it says Wi-Fi automatic channel, I can choose how I want the channels to be configured. So maybe I want to use these 2 bands. I don't want to use channel 56, and I'm going to use 1611, and then I just say run. And just like that, the software is giving you the new channels. We can apply them. And when we apply, we see that the software has optimized to minimize the co-channel interference. So you can see that the channels are different for each one of those access points now. At this point that we've done the automation, we can maybe do something that's, again, unique for iBwave, is some cabling. So to do cabling, first we might need a network equipment. So we'll just go here and grab any controller, and maybe we want to set this room here as our telco closet, and then we're going to need some cable. So we'll go to the cable here, and you can see we support multiple type of cable, but we'll choose twisted pair, and I'll choose here just a generic twisted pair. And to make the connections, it's actually quite simple. As soon as you hover over any of the pictograms here on the layout plan, you can see that they pop up and their connectors show up. So I simply click and drag and drop and connect it to the port that I want. And notice the cable lengths automatically being calculated as I'm making those connections. So I won't do the entire design here, but we'll at least just connect a couple just to illustrate how that works. So we'll do this corner here. And what you're probably noticing is, well, those cables are just crossing through the walls. To shape them, when you click on the cable, you have this little white dot, and you can actually adjust them as you want to clean that up. Or we have a quick way that the tool can try to help you, where you say here, cable style, and horizontal, vertical, horizontal. And then you just have to play with some of the configurations here. So depending on the needs of your design. So obviously this cable can come down. Oops. We can bring this guy down, and you can shape that. If ever you want to change the cable style again, you can also go back to polyline and just shape it manual, whichever works. So on my case, I'm just going to fast forward here a bit. We shape the cable. We see that the cable lengths have added, and in this case, we didn't get any errors or warnings. So our cable lengths are okay. We've done the cabling, we've done that, and I think at this point what would be interesting is to run a quick prediction to see what the result looks like. Now to run the prediction, again on the right hand side we have that prediction tab, and you can create a new prediction by clicking here, add output map, choosing for which technology you want, choosing the type of prediction that you want. So of course we have co-channel interference, best server, best channel, signal strength. Right now let's just do a quick signal strength. And I'm just going to run this here. And so right now the software is actually taking into consideration all the walls and all the obstructions that we have, as well as the antenna patterns, to come up with the prediction for the 5 gigahertz that we chose over here. So now that that's done, I can click on the little eye over here to display it, and we can see the prediction. Notice that in this region where we didn't set the prediction area, it didn't predict. But if I wanted to also use that as a prediction, I could just refresh this and it'll quickly predict in that zone as well. Initially, we didn't set that as a coverage target, and so you can see that it didn't place. Now, we've done that prediction, and to validate the prediction, what I like to do is use the 3D over here to show this current plan in 3D. And here is where it really starts getting interesting. You can see where the access points are placed, how the cable is routed through there, and of course we can put the wireframe on and off to see if there's any areas that we need to optimize and validate, make sure the wall heights are good, and so on. So we've done that prediction, and again, I used what we call the fast ray tracing prediction. This is the 3D prediction, the blue one. If we wanted to do a two-dimensional prediction, we have a different way of doing that. And what does it mean by two-dimensional prediction? So right now I just showed you here in 3D, we modeled all those walls according to their wall heights. If we don't have the luxury of time to model all these walls and add all the different attenuations, we have a second option for predicting quicker, where I can just use over here what we call the Polygon Tool and trace out a polygon over any region that I want. We'll focus on this little corner here. And instead of assigning individual walls to this area, I can now right-click on this polygon, area definition, and see here, environment. I can set this as a different type of density. In this case, let's put high density environment. Then we can grab another polygon over here, and maybe for this one, I'll just do this real quick here because we are running a little short on time. So maybe for this one here, I'll just do close that polygon there, and for this polygon, the environment, we'll set this one as medium. So instead of the walls, you're just putting different densities, and then you can create a new prediction again using the VPLE. So this is the one, if I run here on current plan, the VPLE is the two-dimensional prediction, and here you can see what this algorithm does. So instead of using the walls as attenuation, we just said that this general zone attenuates at a medium RF environment. And you can create different environments as well. Those are just the ones that are default. And you can see here where we're in open space, well, the signal goes stronger. As soon as it hits that environment, it attenuates more. And over here, same thing. If I were to take this access point and put it outside and just rerun that prediction, we can see that, well, on this side where we have open space, it's very strong. As soon as it hits the dense environment, there's an attenuation. So both work, both are extremely accurate, and this is really depending on the type of venue that you're using and the time that you have to use either the two-dimensional or three-dimensional prediction, which is also something that you can do with the mobile tool in that two-dimensional. So we've dropped our access point, we did the cabling, we did the whole design. Let's say we fast forward now and we want to finish that project. We can start running some reports. First report that most people need to run is what we call the equipment list. And so if we run the equipment list, you can see that the software goes through, adds up all the cable, connectors, access point, controller, equipment, and we have that report created for us. We also have an interesting report. Remember, during the site survey, we took a bunch of pictures. Well, we can export all those pictures in one shot by doing here site survey report that shows us where we took pictures and then what were at those pictures. So all these pictures can then be exported to various formats, directly to PDF, PowerPoint, Word, Excel, so on. So you can customize and tailor those reports as needed. And of course, I'm not going to do every report here, but you can do a compliancy report. You can generate a report on access points. You can generate a report on the output predictions and also on the survey data. So this is quite interesting for people that are wrapping up their project. So on that note, I think I want to leave 5 minutes for questions. So we'll quickly wrap up. Before we go to questions, though, one thing that's very important, again, those of you that will be requesting a free trial, just go to our website, iBwave.com, click either here on the second tab, you'll see a big thing for Wi-Fi, or under products, the Wi-Fi suite. And when you click there, we explain to you everything to do with the Wi-Fi, and you can get a free trial. So that's something that we're offering to everyone to try out that tool. And of course, we have a video here explaining the tool on our website. Inside the tool, when you load the tool, again, remember that startup page. This is going to be your quick guide reference to doing things. There are some sample files that come with the project. We have a full detailed help, of course, but this is really something that you can just quickly toggle back at any time and view that there. And of course, if you're submitting projects to customers, you can download a free viewer from our website as well for just being able to view files. Think of like an Adobe PDF viewer, but for those files. So on that note, I think we'll turn it over and check. I see some questions coming in, and we'll do a question period.
Thanks, Scott. That was great. So one of the questions I have here is, it's great to collect measurements while walking with the iBwave Wi-Fi. Is it possible to do that in the mobile app as well?
Yes, so absolutely. All the functionality that we showed here for survey data collection can also be done in the mobile app. In fact, maybe I can even just launch this here and show you guys. But we can maybe take another question as I pop this up.
Another question is, what if only 2D CAD files are available? Can they still be used?
Absolutely. So if you have just two-dimensional CAD files, you can import them. And the way this works is that we have right here at the bottom of my screen, let me just accept this. Okay, perfect. So if I go back to the iBwave, so when you receive a two-dimensional file, we have a wall drawing button over here where you can choose a material and actually draw the walls in manually yourself. So this is one way. We also support the horizontal surface for the floor. And of course, this is pretty interesting. If you have an inclined surface, you can define that there and then validate those walls. So if I go here, that wall that I just drew manually is there, the inclined surface that I drew as well. And sometimes we want to have walls around that. So I can just say here, generate walls around this surface. Use material, and if I go back to the 3D here and we hit a quick refresh, we can see that very quickly we can model a staircase as well in 3D by manually drawing. Good. So just for the survey, the question that came up, you can launch the iBwave Wi-Fi tool over here. And one thing that's nice, anyone that has an Android device can download this free from the Play Store, and you have access to that NetScan. So if you just want to do a regular passive scan, you can do that here, which shows you the existing network. And this is a tool that will be free for everyone all the time. So I can see the scanning here. I can also do an active survey. So we're also leaving this free for everyone. You can download this, and if you download the free viewer, it gives you access to that active server, so you can do free active testing as well. And of course, in the tool, well, the question that was asked is, can we collect some survey inside the tool? Absolutely. Once you bring in a floor plan here on that mobile tool, you can see there's a button for survey. And when I click survey and I say start, I have the choice to do passive or active again. Let's just do a quick passive. And just as we did, well, you can do walk and go survey. So this is all doing that data inside the mobile app.
Great, thanks. And Just one last quick question to wrap up here is, can you create exclusion areas where APs should not be automatically placed?
Yes, and this is actually what happened when I did that design here. If I go to the second floor, initially I had not set this as a prediction area, so I can unselect it here. And so it won't predict. And if you notice, when I ran the initial automatic placement, it didn't place any access points here. Watch what happens when I right-click and say that I want to set this as a prediction. We go back to the automation, and if we rerun using the same criteria, we're going to see that right now it's actually going to drop some access points over here. So in this case, dropping a lot more access points to cover that region.
Okay, great. Thanks, Scott. So we're all out of time today, unfortunately. For those who asked questions and we didn't get to them, we will respond to you offline with the answers. So thank you very much to everyone who joined us today. And just a reminder that you can look for a recording from today's presentation in your inbox in the coming days. And don't forget, you can always get a free trial of iBwave Wi-Fi on our website, or you can get the mobile app on Google Play. Both have free trials. So thanks again to Scott, and thanks to all of you for taking the time to join us. I hope you have a great day, and we're now going to end the webinar. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, everyone, for joining.